Hello and welcome to the podcast From Self-Development to Self-Dissolution. My name is Laura Deva and I'm going to be your host for those multiple episodes geeking around topics to understand what is self-development, how do we develop the self, and then how do we surrender the self to know our deepest true nature. I'm a clinical psychologist and I'm also a seeker of truth. I went through many different lifetimes in once, and I want to share with you a lot of those gems that I have discovered along my path. I wish you a beautiful next episode. So the gift and the curse of being a human being is that we develop the capacity to reflect on the self. And we can reflect on the self through our sensorial experience, which is what is developed towards childhood in different stages of development, until the mental body kicks in and we start developing our capacity to reflect mentally on the self. Why I say it's a gift and a curse, it's because the beauty of it, it's enhanced our evolutionary path to expand our capacity of being, to inhabit this envelope of being to its maximum capacity. And every time that we have an insight on who are we, who am I, which was one of the biggest questions of philosophy of all times, then the capacity of being more and more of ourselves becomes wider, and we feel more evolved or full of a sense of existence. It has its own limitation, especially when it confines the self into an individual form, because you can search as much as you want, you can have as much as you want, you can become the best person as you want. It will come a point where there is a limitation in what you can be as an individual. I feel like this is what we call self-development, like trying to ask yourself more questions about who am I, what kind of individual I am, how do I relate with the world, where are my weaknesses, how can I overcome my weakness and my traumas, and how can I become a better person. And then eventually from there are other questions that usually, to me, comes more into the realm of the soul. The soul is also asking to that capacity to reflect on the self, but the self is not anymore an individual container that contains only my own experience, but it starts to expand into an experience of those wider energies that are experienced through your container, through you, but that reveals an eternal tapestry of history and of life through many beings. And so in many cases, we think that our own wounds are just personal to our own story, but then we realize, wow, most of human beings have experienced betrayals. So maybe in different forms, but that quality of betrayals as almost its own intelligence that moves through individuals, and that will reveal a certain gift of expanding your capacity to love, for example. So the experience of itself is also a curse, because it can kind of lock you into an indulgence of only seeing you and only being interested in what makes you a human being. And when you reach that capacity, either you stay stuck into this jail, and a lot of people being really stuck into self-development work and stuck into the curse of it, which is you're never good enough, and that you always have something else to work on you, because you can be better than that, because you're still stuck into some wounds. So that's the limitation of that self-awareness. And what it's asking for, it's asking to expand your capacity to see beyond the self. So it's stretching the self to a wider self that it's not including only of you anymore, but of collective consciousness, and to start dancing with those energies. was talking before about step parenting and like what it is, this archetype of being a step parent, and then what is this quality that so many humans went into, either through the shape of step parenting or just because suddenly you're taking care of a child because, I don't know, it's your goddaughter or it's like your nephew or anyone, and then you become an adult that is relating to a child. And that energy in itself is something that many humans are going through. And so the wisdom of that entity is also revealed through your individual experience and expression, but it comes from a wider vortex in which you're plugging into, and in which you're going to be confronted also through the wisdom that has been kept of the many lifetime of many humans, and that you can tap into, and also the many collective wounds that are linked with it. So then I feel like it comes many times in the lifetime of someone that your soul is knocking at the door and is asking you somehow to see wider of your own perspective. It's calling you to dance with realm of collective awareness, and whether or not you're aware of it, it will dance you in so many ways. Having consciousness around it, it means that somehow there is a there is a healing process of your personality that wants to be unique, that wants that this experience is unique to you, and that this is your own suffering that needs to be seen for what it is as yours. And it will ask you to surrender that possessiveness around your experience, and to almost like bow down to the many people within your ancestry line that have lived or went through the similar experience. And that humbleness also allows you to receive the wisdom of the experience that you haven't experienced yourself. Yeah? So there's capacities sometimes to receive wisdom from the experience of the collective awareness just through accepting that you are moved by that energy instead of thinking that you are creating or inducing that experience yourself. And somehow, without it to be a bypass, because it's easy to say, oh, that's not my life, everything's moving through me, there is actually such a vulnerability to be both experiencing something difficult or something challenging as a personal experience, and in the same time, simultaneously, letting that energy be moved through you while surrendering to the fact that this experience is not only yours. And if it's not only yours, it means that you're giving also the possibility of that energy to have its own intelligence and to have its own resolution through the skills and gift that you individually have developed into this life. So, yeah, there's a limitation between the self-development and the soul emergence, and you go from one to the other one with a threshold of annihilation somehow. It feels like this. It feels like that you have to give up your possessivity even for your own misery. And this is something that I see a lot in clinical work. The attachment that people have upon their own experiences and even their worst trauma or suffering is sometimes way bigger than the capacity to surrender to the fact that something is moving through, and which means that this will also pass. It will also have its own wave of experience until it's integrated into the ocean where it came from. And this attachment to my story is sometimes what is on the way for us to be more at ease, or to relax into something that is deeply difficult or challenging. And that's one of the first thresholds, to fall into the universal story, to know that you are just one soul reuniting with the wider soup of experience of that energy through you. Yeah, so whether we want it or not, evolution is constantly happening. At the moment you were born, you're already starting to die, right? So evolution is not an option. It's just a human, I mean, not even a human, it's like a manifestation condition that the moment that you are in the manifest, you are going through a process of evolution. What accelerates the evolution is the awareness of it and the willingness. It's basically giving consent to life to move you through the stage of life and through the stage of evolution that might be different from one individual to another one. That's a question that a lot of people ask in therapy usually. It's like, well, how much work do I have to do? Wow, I realize that there is so much work to do. Well, the work is already done. It's already being done through you. Then the only thing that you can do is actually accepting this movement to move through you. The only work you can do is to ease the resistances around evolution. And one of the manifestation of that collective resistance against evolution is the collective unwillingness for us to age. For example, you know, like we're trying to extend our lifespan, to become young and stay young forever, to look younger, to erase the sign of aging. And it's not just in female bodies. I know in female bodies it's a bit more extended, but it's in everything. So that's our first resistance somehow, or the biggest manifestation of the resistance towards evolution. Everything will disappear into compost, and compost will transform itself into a new shape, and that's the next part of evolution. So in that train of evolution, in that journey of evolution, that somehow my personality sometimes want to believe that it's on the driver seat of that evolution. And to some extent, it's true, but I would more say it's a co-pilot of it, more than the pilot itself. Because life is moving you towards the places in which there is more possibility for your soul to expand to its totality. Imagine that the soul is a drop of the ocean that is taken away from it so that it can experience diversity through the fact that it's individual, but its own realization would be to eventually realize that what lives in that drop is the exact same thing that lives in the ocean, and eventually to come back to the ocean with that awareness that I've been the ocean all my life, but I've been just a drop of water that was lost from its realization of belonging to that totality. And so as a drop of water, that could be the metaphor for this human being that is growing into a baby body, that then start to have a sense and a realization that there is a physical body, and that then start to see itself in the mirror and realizing why I have a reflection, this is what I look like, and I can provoke some emotional response to other depending on how I am. So all those experience of the self will slowly tend to bring you back to that memory of being the ocean. And every stage of those realization are kind of initiations in which you become wider after every experience that stretched you to the capacity of your identity. So any of your experience that have been difficult so far would have left you, not only we say it left you with a scar, but it left you with a stretch marks. So those stretch marks are just showing that you're capable to become more, to inhabit more space and more capacity to feel you as a total being, and a total being that has the whole ocean within itself. So all those initiation can be either radical, depending on how much you identify or you resist to that process, or it can be gentle. The more you start to be an ally of that evolution within you. I believe that the most radical experiences come from resistance. And I was sharing that with a friend the other day, because I certainly had a lot of radical initiation in my life where you have no choice. It's like either you decide to see more of you now or you die. You know, it was like my case when I had the cancer at 18. And those radical initiation come, I think, when you have a strong will, and when that will is turning against the process of evolution, so that you use your will to resist to an inevitable process that life is calling you into. And if you resist to the point that life has no choice but put you on your knees and give you the sentence of death if you do not respond to it, then it will. And then you decide, either I stop this experience right now and I die, either literally, either through different processes that can kill some part of your ego, either I surrender to that process. And so the radicality comes when actually you're the most resistant. You know? And I feel like the more you start dancing and becoming ally with that process that is not there to kill you, it's there to show you and bring you back to the ocean that you belong to. So it's your best friend that is whispering you to go and step on the edge of this mountain and slowly, slowly accept to become the wind and the rocks and the empty space and everything, so that you don't feel that you're just jumping into nothing, but you're jumping into the best version of you, into something that is gonna welcome you back into a wider shape, into a wider existential foundation of who you are. So when you start listening more to those whispers, at the beginning they're whispers, and then eventually they're authoritarian and tyrannical orders, and if not, then they become like, I don't know, I don't have the name, but like radical injunctions, you know. So there is a choice there. You decide whether you want that experience of growth and evolution and totality to be smooth. And in that case, you take a deep breath every time you acknowledge that this is uncomfortable and that you might not really want to go into this. But remember that it's going to be easier if you give consent to it. If you do not give consent, you won't have the choice at one point, and you'll be confronted whether you like it or not, whether you think it's a good time or not, because it's not on your own terms. It's on the terms of your evolutionary path that is almost like a DNA that is here within you since the moment you were born, even since before. But it's already there. It's just unfolding to its path of evolution, and your mind is just trying to track it and be like, this is not convenient right now, let's just make it there, having its own strategy that's going to be smashed out anyway. So yeah, just take a breath, relax into the seat, not of the driver but of the passenger, maybe the co-pilot, and just be like, okay, may your will be done. And just relax into what is your next step of evolution, because it will come for you, always.